All right. Hello, everyone. This is Brooke Adams here. Thank you for those who are just joining now. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. Super excited to have you all on the call. This is the Bernie 2020 Teach In on the coronavirus and the social safety net. We'll start in just 1 minute here.
Thank you all for joining us on this teach-in on coronavirus and the safety net. These are, of course, extremely trying times for everyone. And I'm incredibly inspired by the fact that there are so many people continuing to plug in and engage with this movement and try to grow this movement under the most difficult of circumstances. My name is Samir Santi. I'm an organizer with the Bernie campaign, and I'm really excited to be helping to facilitate this teach-in today. I hope many of you had the opportunity to watch Senator Sanders' roundtable last night. And if you haven't, I'd encourage you to check it out after this um, and to check out some of the other live streams he's done over the past week. The senator spoke last night about how this is a truly unprecedented crisis and one that requires incredibly bold action. He also outlined the steps that we need to take to respond to this crisis in a way that protects working people and doesn't just give it away to the 1%. The purpose of this teaching is to review some of the policy principles Senator Sanders outlined and to show that while this crisis is unprecedented, the emergency measures we have to take to provide security to working people and to stabilize the economy, which he outlined last night, have been done before. During the Great Depression and World War II, working people and FDR's New Deal administration fought for and won many of the things we're talking about today. So before I go any further, I want to let my co-facilitators introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Heather Gottney, and I'm coming to you from the great state of Vermont. I am a senior policy advisor for the Bernie 2020 campaign, and I'm looking forward to discussing the senator's plan and what he's doing to confront this very serious crisis that we all face.
Thank you. My name is Brooke Adams. Really excited to be here today. I am Pennsylvania State Coordinator for the campaign, formerly North Carolina State Coordinator, and formerly Iowa Field Director. So I'm really excited to be here today. I think we're in a moment when organizing and bringing people together as people are feeling quite alone in this crisis that we're facing is all the more important. So excited to be here and to talk to you all a bit at the end of this presentation about ways that you all can get involved in organizing the effort to fight this crisis and also fight for a better world.
The purpose of this teach-in is to go over different aspects of the senator's coronavirus emergency policy so we're all understanding what it is, what it entails, and to discuss ways we're going to organize around it going forward. So with that, I want to pass it off to Dr. Heather Gottney to begin to introduce the policy itself.
Great. Thank you, Samir. First, I just want to direct everybody to berniesanders.com, to the issues page. This plan in full and many of the other policies on the senator's platform are available online in detail if you'd like to look at them. Senator Sanders' plan, his response plan to the coronavirus pandemic, he was recently introduced just a few days ago, and this is something that he is currently and actively fighting for in the Senate. This plan would drastically expand the federal response to the coronavirus, and it follows three central principles, all of which have historical precedent. The first principle derives from the senator's strong belief that healthcare should be a human right and not a privilege for the few. In the plan, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services would provide emergency medical coverage for all people and would work with the CDC, other federal agencies, and the private sector to coordinate a centralized response. All testing, treatment, and eventually the vaccine would be available free of charge, and our national capacity to provide healthcare would be greatly expanded. This would require mobilizing all medical personnel, medical residents, students, retired professionals to help mitigate this crisis. It would involve reopening closed hospitals, expanding community health centers, and mobilizing the military to build healthcare and testing facilities. And it would involve expanding the Defense Production Act, which would enable the federal government to expand production of medical equipment like ventilators and masks on a mass scale.
All right, folks, another thing to pop in the chat. How many rural hospitals do you think have closed in the last 10 years? Let's get some guesses going in the chat. What do you think? What's the number? How many rural hospitals have closed in the last 10 years? All right, lots of guesses. We got things going from 500. Guesses all over the place coming up. Guesses all over the place coming up. All right, the answer is 120 rural hospitals have closed in the last decade. That is thousands of beds. And as of a few weeks ago, more than 450 rural hospitals were deemed vulnerable to closure. We got to reopen these things, and doing so and doing whatever everything that Dr. Gani suggested may sound ambitious, but things like this have been done before and they can be done again. At the start of World War II, the United States didn't have nearly enough military airplanes, just like we don't have nearly enough ventilators today. And believe it or not, at the start of the war, many corporate executives opposed converting their factories to military production because they were worried about the profits they would lose when the war ended. It was working people who led the way forward. Unions like the auto workers fought to turn things like automobile factories into aircraft production facilities and to convert all kinds of other production facilities into producing necessary equipment. They fought to make sure that all workers would have basic rights, a living wage, and union representation during that process. And led by workers of color, they fought to make sure that all defense production would be desegregated. Thanks to their efforts, we greatly increased our defense production in a very short time. And there's no reason we can't do the same thing today in our war against coronavirus. Another thing to pop in the chat. How much did the US increase the production of military aircrafts during World War II? By how much? By a factor of how many? What are some guesses? Pop it into the chat. Pop it into the chat. Let's see. What are we guessing? What are we guessing? What do we got? 2 times? Do they double it? By 1,000 times? What do we think? All right, I see a range of guesses. The answer, we increased military production or military aircraft production by 30 times during World War II. And let me say something, producing a bomber or a military airplane is very complicated and on a different order of magnitude than producing ventilators. I think if we could increase our production of military aircraft by 30 times during World War II, we can increase our production of ventilators, masks, gowns, and all kinds of essential medical equipment by many, many, many fold, even that. And with that, that's point one. Let me pass it on to Heather to take on the second principle of the senator's plan.
Thank you. The second principle in his plan addresses the economic aspects of this crisis using many of the same very effective strategies that FDR employed during the New Deal.
During the Great Depression, unemployment hit 25%, and no one knew what was happening or when it would end. Yet, even under those conditions, working people took action and got results. Councils of unemployed workers organized to demand access to food, to demand moratoriums on evictions and foreclosures. That is a right to housing, even in a time of depression. Workers went on strike in large numbers. In 1934 alone, general strikes in San Francisco, Minneapolis, and Toledo shut down entire cities. And working people voted en masse for FDR and for the New Deal vision. Through that New Deal, working people won income support in the form of unemployment insurance, Social Security, and the right to form a union. They won food stamps and caps on interest rates. And they won public jobs programs like the WPA, which built housing, infrastructure, and hospitals. Another thing to pop in the chat. how many bridges do you think New Deal public works programs like the WPA built in the 1930s and 1940s? How many bridges, let's say? What do we think? What do we think in terms of bridges? We got a few hundred. We got 1,000. What do we think? Well, I think most of these guesses are under the mark. The answer is New Deal public works programs built 78,000 bridges, 40,000 public buildings, 480 airports, and over 100 hospitals. If we could build all that stuff in the 1930s and 40s, we surely can expand our healthcare infrastructure to deal with what's coming with this crisis today.
Senator Sanders' plan, which involves establishing an emergency economic crisis finance agency, uses many of the same tools. It guarantees income by providing emergency $2,000 cash payments to every person in America, making sure that workers are kept on payrolls, and providing relief for small and medium sized businesses, and expanding unemployment insurance so that everyone who loses their job gets 100% of their salary, up to $75,000 a year. This insurance would also cover tip workers, gig workers, domestic workers, freelancers, and independent contractors. In addition to income protections, his plan limits the costs that working people face by helping them pay their bills and defer their taxes, assisting with rental and mortgage payments, and providing student debt relief. And finally, his plan would stabilize the larger economy by placing a moratorium on evictions, foreclosures, and utility shutoffs, constructing an emergency shelter system for homeless and displaced people, using the Federal Reserve to support state and local governments, and making sure that no one in America goes hungry by expanding Meals on Wheels for seniors, school lunch programs, and food stamps. The third principle in Senator Sanders' plan involves combating corruption and price gouging. Senator Sanders would create an oversight agency to protect working people and prevent corporations from profiting off this crisis.
Corporations often and indeed have always seen crises as opportunities for profit making. But working people have collectively fought back against this before, and we can fight back against it today. To prevent price gouging during World War II, the federal government enlisted working people around the country to report the prices they were being charged for food, clothing, medicine, and just about everything else. A federal agency collected all of this data from all over the country, and this is before they had computers to deal with all of this, and went after the corporations that were gouging consumers. If they could do it then, we can do it now. And we can hold the pharmaceutical companies, Amazon, and others accountable for the prices they charge. All right. Pop in the chat, trivia question. Which future US president worked on World War II era price control policy? Who do you think it was? This is in the 1940s, so someone who came after that. Which future US president worked on World War II era price control policy? It was not Bernie Sanders, though he, I believe, is a future US president. The answer is a Republican, Richard Nixon, who worked for the Office of Price Administration and himself went on to establish price controls during his presidency in the 1970s.
And for Senator Sanders' plan, he would create an oversight agency to fight corporate corruption and price gouging. And as part of that plan, would mandate that all emergency credit or loans be made to insolvent companies must come with protections and benefits for workers, unions, and customers. That means no stock buybacks and no big bonuses for CEOs. Corporations will not qualify for financial assistance unless they keep their workers employed and pay them a living wage. Senator Sanders would also prohibit price gouging, especially by companies that produce basic necessities like food, gas, and medicine. Prescription drugs developed with taxpayer dollars must be sold at reasonable prices. And as soon as a coronavirus vaccine is developed, it must be available free of charge to all people.
So many of you and many people, and certainly some of the Republicans, are going to say, how are you going to pay for all this? How are we going to pay for all this? Well, on the one hand, the question is really, how aren't we going to pay for it? What's the cost of not paying for it? But just to go through the exercise, what do you think the top tax rate on the wealthiest Americans was during the Republican Dwight Eisenhower administration in the 1950s? Let's get it. Who do you think? What do you think? Top tax rate on wealthiest Americans during the Republican Dwight Eisenhower administration. What do we think it was? What do we think it was? Guesses seem to be ranging. Most again seem under the mark. Well, the answer 91%. The wealthiest Americans paid a top tax rate of 91%. And if we tax the top 1% at that rate for just the past 5 years, we would have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to deal with this crisis.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather and Samir, for this excellent overview of what Senator Sanders is proposing to fight the coronavirus. So next, I want to take a second to talk about what we do next. As Samir mentioned, we've got a window right now that is narrow to shape the narrative around what caused this crisis and what solutions we need to get through it and ultimately to build a better world. So right now, we are living in unprecedented times. Many of us are worried about our jobs, our healthcare, the well-being of our family members or ourselves. And Bernie is fighting for what we know we need and we deserve. So pop in the YouTube chat right now if you think that in the middle of a public health emergency, we absolutely need to expand our healthcare system. Pop in the YouTube chat if you think in the middle of a public health emergency, we need to expand unemployment, that we need to protect gig and non-traditional workers and guarantee that no one goes hungry or loses their house. And who's watching right now who thinks that we need to take political power back from corporations and billionaires and make sure that it's in our hands as the people of this country? So we have a really, truly unique ability right now to make all of these things a reality and make history. But it is going to take every single person making the decision to step up and get involved in the fight to really build out on these three major policy platforms that Senator Sanders is proposing. So what do we need to do? Well, the task ahead is simple. We've got to inspire people throughout the country to take action that they otherwise would not take. Because for a lot of people right now, the crisis is a matter of life and death. For undocumented families who are seeking healthcare, for people who don't have a home, for communities of color, for people who aren't able to put food on the table, and for all of us who are uninsured or underinsured. Everyone's got something at stake right now. And we have a shared responsibility to act and step up and do something about that. The math is pretty simple, right? We can all spend a few hours of our week putting in the work to transform the world or face an ever-escalating crisis. And as Bernie himself asked a few months ago, I want everyone who's watching right now to think about all of the people throughout the country, especially those who look different from you, especially those you don't know, and think about whether you're willing to fight for someone you don't know as much as you're willing to fight for yourself in the middle of this crisis. And whether you're willing to fight for a government that's based on decency, justice, and compassion. If you are willing to do that, then you are ready to step up and take the necessary steps that we got to take to move this agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and walk us through a few of the key ways that we can get involved in making sure that we do everything we can to fight this crisis, to fight for those we care about, and make sure everyone has the health care, the basic care that they need. So the first thing that we're going to do on this call all together is download the Burn app. And I want to say a few words about why this is so important. So one of the key parts of organizing is talking to people that we already know, because a lot of us who are watching right now are bought in and aware of what Bernie's policy platform is. But we've got to make sure that we are bringing in new people who are wondering, what is next? What do we need to do? And one of the best ways to do that is by downloading the Burn app so that you can actually directly reach out to your own friends, your own family, people who aren't already connected to this movement, and get them involved. So it might be tempting to say, oh, I'll just do this later, or, I know the website, I can do it when I get home. But we've got a really narrow window right now to make sure that we are doing everything we can to fight this coronavirus. So, what we need everyone to do right here on this live stream is go to app.berniesanders.com on your phone, where it will go ahead and prompt you to download the Burn app. So the first thing that you want to do once you've downloaded the app, again, go to app.berniesanders.com on your phone and go ahead and download it, is that you're going to want to opt in for push notifications. This is really important. You want to say yes here. This is how the campaign is going to notify you of any important updates about reminders you need to send your friend. For example, there might be a time when your friend needs a reminder to request their vote by mail ballot. These push notifications will pop up on the Burn app to remind you of the different actions that you need to ask your friends to take. Next, you're going to want to add all your friends from your phone contacts. So again, just to recap, everyone's going to want to go to app.berniesanders.com, allow push notifications. And the next step here is to add your friends from your contacts. So, an important note here, the campaign is never going to take the contact information of your friends. We're not going to reach out to them on your behalf. This is simply to allow you to directly reach out to your friends via some of the standard messages that we've created on the Burn app. So go ahead and select the friends you want to invite and click Add Friends. Okay, great. And the next step that we're going to ask everyone to take together here on this call is that you can go through each of your friends as one of the actions. You'll see on the top right on the Burn app, there's a blue icon called Actions. And when you click that, one of the key actions is matching your friends to their voter record and marking their support level. This allows you to basically check if your friends are already in the voter record and then go through and flag any of the folks who are strong Bernie supporters. So again, the first step is you'll look them up here, and that will allow you to see if they're already in the voter record. And then you're going to want to click Tell Us About Your Friends so that you can go through the app and track which ones of your friends are supporting Bernie or where they currently stand. So there's a 1 through 7 scale here. 1 is a strong supporter. And then you have 5, which is will not support, and a range in between, not voting and not sure. So you're just going to want to go through and mark where each of your friends stands. And then one additional thing you can do, say you have a friend from, childhood, from school, who you might not have the contact information for, but you have seen they posted on Facebook, or, they're a strong Bernie supporter. You can add friends one by one through the Friends tab, in addition to having synced your contacts. Okay, great. And finally, this is critical. There are a bunch of actions up in the top right-hand corner that you can use to check in with your friends. It is super important that we complete all of the follow-up actions for all of our friends here, because this is where the organizing happens, right? It's one thing to add your friends in, but it's another to engage in meaningful conversations with them, where we invite them into the movement and check in with them on how they're doing. So there's a new action that was added to the Burn app. That's a great way to start off conversations this morning. It's a general wellness check to send your friends to check in on how they're doing during the coronavirus. And then you'll see there are other actions in addition to this, including inviting all of your friends to create Burn apps themselves so they can go through this same process that you just went through to contact them. So the last thing you're going to want to make sure you do today is add all of your friends, complete the follow-up actions with all of your friends. And there's a number on the bottom left-hand corner that will track how many remaining actions you still have to take. So we're going to want to make sure to get that number down to 0 as you send messages out to all of your friends today. All right, so next up, Samir mentioned this, but it is super, super important that we are getting our story out there of why we are in the crisis we are in and what it's going to take to really move some of these bold, visionary demands that Bernie Sanders is asking for. So we are asking everyone who is watching today to invite 5 of your friends to join our next teach-in. We're going to be hosting these weekly. And you can go to berniesanders.com/COVID teach-in for the links for the teach-in sessions that we are hosting this upcoming week. This coming Friday, we're going to have another iteration of this same teach-in that you can invite those 5 friends to join. And when you go to this website, you can actually go ahead and directly RSVP them via the Mobilize link that is linked there. And then finally, there is a whole host of teach-ins that we're going to be having next week as a follow-up from this one to dig into some more particular topics about the crisis we're in and what it's going to take to really organize and build this movement. So when you go to that same exact website, berniesanders.com/COVID teach-in, there is a list of other teach-ins that everyone here on this live stream can go ahead and sign up for. We do recommend everyone starts with the intro teach-in that we had today, and we'll be having again next Friday, but there's a whole host of other sessions. You'll see them listed here that you can go ahead and sign up for based on what you're interested in, where we will be unpacking more about how we got to the crisis that we're in and what it's going to take. So just to recap, we want to make sure everyone downloads the Burn app at app.berniesanders.com today, invites 5 of your friends to our next teach-in so that we can make sure we are spreading the word. And then finally, that you go through all of the links at berniesanders.com/COVID teach-in and continue to RSVP for the sessions that are of interest to you. So finally, just want to close us out here with a quote from the senator. From his Twitter today, he posted, "Every country on earth is going to be affected by the coronavirus. We are all in this together. We must work together. If there was ever a moment to show each other unprecedented love, compassion, and solidarity, this is that moment." So we wanted to leave everyone on this call with this quote because I think we're in a moment right now where we're all physically distanced and it can be really easy to feel isolated because of how unprecedented this crisis is. So it is all the more important that we find ways to reach out to people, we find ways to educate people, we find ways to really build together in spite of being physically alone, because ultimately that is what it's going to take in this moment when we have a huge opportunity to shape the outcomes and the solutions that are being proposed. So we can do this, y'all. We can do it together. We've just got to make sure to take these basic organizing steps and keep growing one by one the number of people who are engaged in this movement so that ultimately we can win. Thank you all so much for joining today, and we will hopefully see you on some of our future live streams coming up this week. Talk to you all soon.